queen was hiding something. That's what the people of France whispered in the marketplaces and the candlelit salons, in the crowded streets of Paris and the opulent halls of Versailles. They whispered of secrets and deception, of greed and arrogance. They whispered of a necklace fit for a queen, dripping in diamonds, a treasure beyond imagining. And they whispered that it was all Marie Antoinette's doing. But what they did not know, what no one knew, was that the truth was far more twisted than the lies. The necklace was unlike anything the world had ever seen, a masterpiece of diamonds, a fortune in gemstones strung together like a river of ice. It had been made for Madame du Barry, the mistress of King Louis XV, but before it could grace her neck, the king had died, and his son, Louis XVI, refused to buy it. So the jewelers turned to his wife, Marie Antoinette, hoping she would be unable to resist its beauty, but she also declined. "We need ships, not necklaces," she said, brushing off the offer. And so the necklace sat, waiting for someone wealthy enough to claim it. And then, someone did. Late one summer night, in the shadowed gardens of Versailles, a man waited alone beneath the marble statues of the Grove of Venus. Cardinal Louis de Rohan had spent years yearning for the Queen's favor, hoping to erase the shame of his past missteps. He had made the ill-fated mistake of speaking down on Marie Antoinette's mother, and had been paying the price ever since. The Queen had not spoken to him in years, had refused his bows, his letters, his desperate attempts to win back her grace. But now, he had been given a second chance. A secret letter had arrived, a single line written in the elegant hand he had studied from afar. Perhaps it is time to make amends. "Your Majesty, I have waited for this moment all my life." As the moon bathed the garden in silver, a woman stepped forward from the shadows, her white silk gown whispering against the gravel path. She was veiled, but the shape of her face, the delicate arch of her neck, he knew it was her, the Queen. His heart pounded. He fell to his knees. "Your Majesty," he whispered. She reached out, fingers grazing his cheek, soft as the petals of a flower. "You are forgiven," she murmured, pressing a single white rose into his trembling hands. A rose, a promise. And then, as quickly as she had come, she slipped away into the shadows, leaving him breathless with relief. At last, he had her trust, and he would do anything to keep it. More letters followed. In them, the Queen confided in him, her words laced with urgency. "I wish to claim the diamond necklace, but I must do so in secret." She explained the dangers of appearing too extravagant, of the whispers already surrounding her spending. "I trust you, dear friend, to act as my intermediary." The cardinal swore he would serve her, that he would protect her secret, that he would see the necklace delivered into her hands. He felt chosen, elevated. He had been cast aside for years, left wandering the corridors of Versailles like a ghost, ignored, invisible. But now he was the Queen's most trusted confidant. And so, with her supposed blessing, he approached the jewelers. The deal was arranged. The necklace, worth a fortune, was delivered to the Queen's trusted agent, a man who arrived in the dead of night, dressed in the royal livery. With great reverence, the jewelers placed the treasure in his hands. Marie Antoinette's long-awaited wish had been granted. The cardinal went to bed that night with a smile on his lips. A month passed. Then two. And then, a visit from the jewelers. They arrived at Versailles demanding payment, speaking of the Queen's agreement, of her trusted cardinal, of the necklace she now possessed. Marie Antoinette looked at them with great confusion. "What necklace?" she asked. For a moment, they thought she was toying with them. "The one you had delivered, Your Majesty. The one the cardinal arranged on your behalf." Marie Antoinette rose from her chair, her voice like ice. "I never sent for the necklace, and I never wrote to the cardinal." A heavy silence fell. Then her words slammed through the halls of Versailles like thunder. "Summon Cardinal de Rohan, immediately." The trap snapped shut. The cardinal was dragged before the queen, clutching his letters, pleading his case. But Marie Antoinette's eyes burned with fury as she ripped one of the letters from his trembling fingers. She turned it over in her hands, tracing a single fingernail over the wax seal, and then she laughed, cold, sharp, unforgiving. "You believe these letters are mine?" His voice wavered. "They bear your signature." Marie Antoinette turned the letter to the light. "That," she said, "is a forgery." The color drained from Rohan's face. But the meeting," he gasped. "We spoke. You gave me your blessing." Her eyes narrowed. "I did no such thing." The room spun. "The woman in the gardens," he whispered. "Who was she?" Marie Antoinette tilted her head. "Not me." It hit him like a cannon blast. He had never met the queen. He had been tricked. The letters were forged. The meeting was staged. The queen had never wanted the necklace. It had all been a lie. Jean de la Motte saw Cardinal Rohan as an easy target, a man whose desperation blinded him to deception. She knew of his long-standing humiliation, his deep desire to be in the queen's good graces once more, and, most importantly, she knew he was gullible enough to believe a fantasy if it was beautifully wrapped in silk and secrecy. But Jeanne herself was no noblewoman of Versailles, not truly. She had been born Jeanne de Saint-Remy, a descendant of the once mighty Valois dynasty, the bloodline that had ruled France before the Bourbons. But the Valois had long since fallen, and Jeanne's family had been left with nothing but a famous name and empty pockets. She had spent her childhood in poverty, a noble in name only, watching from the outside as others lived the life she believed was rightfully hers. Versailles had been closed to her, its halls filled with women of lesser birth who had been lucky enough to marry well or be born to the right fortune. Jeanne had neither luck nor wealth, only ambition. She had clawed her way up, marrying Nicolas de la Motte, a minor officer with no title and no real fortune, but one who shared her hunger for money and status. Jeanne was never content with what little she had. She wanted riches, she wanted influence, she wanted to live as a woman of power, and she would take whatever means necessary to get it. And so, she built her facade, slipping into Versailles' fringes, speaking just loudly enough to be heard, planting rumors that she was a close friend of the queen, a woman of private influence, trusted with delicate affairs. The illusion worked, and when she befriended Rohan, she did so with a purpose. With the promise of Marie Antoinette's forgiveness, Jeanne played him like a violin, and when he was at his most vulnerable, she moved in for the final deception. With the help of her husband, Nicolas de la Motte, and her lover, Rétaux de Villette, an expert forger, she began weaving the illusion. The letters, each written in a careful imitation of Marie Antoinette's hand, had been Villette's masterpiece, flawless, convincing, each one feeding Rohan's growing obsession. But the true brilliance of the scheme was the meeting. The woman Rohan had met in the gardens of Versailles that fateful night had never been the queen. She was Nicole d'Oliva, a young actress and courtesan, plucked from the streets of Paris for her passing resemblance to Marie Antoinette. Jeanne had coached her for weeks, ensuring that her posture, her gestures, even the cadence of her whisper would mimic the queen. "Say as little as possible," Jeanne had warned her. "Let him believe what he wants to believe." It had worked flawlessly. The white rose, the hushed words, the way she disappeared into the shadows, leaving Rohan convinced he had just secured the queen's trust. And with that, Jeanne de la Motte moved on to the next step. The time had come for the final act. Jeanne convinced Rohan that Marie Antoinette wished to obtain the diamond necklace in secret and that he must act as her trusted intermediary. "The queen cannot be seen purchasing it herself," she had whispered to him, her voice thick with false urgency, "but she desires it more than anything. You must arrange the exchange." And so, Cardinal de Rohan, believing he was serving his queen, approached the desperate jewelers and arranged for the delivery, with the promise of payment once the necklace reached the queen. On the night of the exchange, a man dressed in royal livery arrived to collect the necklace. It was Nicolas de la Motte, Jean's husband, disguised as a royal valet. With no reason to suspect anything was amiss, the jewelers handed over the masterpiece worth millions of dollars. The moment it was in John and Nicholas's possession, it vanished. The couple wasted no time. The very next day, they fled to London, carrying the priceless necklace with them. The necklace, however, was too recognizable to sell as a whole, so they dismantled it, prying the diamonds from their settings, breaking apart the grand design that had once been intended for a queen. Piece by piece, the gems were sold off to unsuspecting buyers across Europe. By the time anyone realized what had happened, the necklace no longer existed, at least, not as it once had. It was now scattered, its diamonds adorning the necks, fingers, and ears of noblewomen and merchants from Paris to London, from Vienna to Amsterdam. The grandest piece of jewelry in France had been reduced to nothing more than a handful of glittering stones, each one carrying a piece of a crime no one yet knew had been committed. For a time, Jeanne lived in luxury, enjoying the wealth she had stolen, believing she had outwitted the crown itself. She had changed her residence frequently, moving between Paris and the countryside, avoiding suspicion, spending lavishly while the jewelers waited for their payment, oblivious to the theft. But secrets have a way of slipping through even the tightest of fingers. The jewelers, growing impatient, finally approached the queen directly, and in that instant, the illusion collapsed. Names began to surface. The letters were closely examined, their fraudulence exposed. The scandal exploded like wildfire, and the hunt for Jeanne began in earnest. She ran. She hid in the back alleys of Paris, bribed those who might betray her, paid for silence with the very diamonds she had stolen. But the law caught up with her. Dragged back to Paris in chains, she was thrown into prison, awaiting trial for one of the most audacious crimes in French history. Her accomplices fell one by one. Cardinal de Rohan was publicly humiliated, arrested before the entire court. But when he was tried, he was acquitted, enraging the queen and further damaging her reputation. Nicole d'Oliva, the actress who had posed as Marie Antoinette, was arrested but later acquitted, as she had truly believed she was simply playing a role in a harmless game. Rétaux de Villette, the forger, was banished from France. Nicolas de la Motte escaped justice, fleeing the country before he could be captured. But Jeanne was not so lucky. She was convicted, sentenced to be branded with a hot iron, the letter V for voleur or thief seared into her flesh for all to see. She screamed in agony, cursing the queen, swearing revenge. But the damage had been done. She later escaped from prison, vanishing into London, where she spent the rest of her life spreading false accounts of the scandal, twisting the narrative to paint herself as the victim. And the world believed her, and Marie Antoinette paid the price for the crime. Though Jean de la Motte had been the architect of the deception, Marie Antoinette had to answer for her role in the plot. The trial had cleared her of any wrongdoing, yet it did nothing to clear her name in the eyes of the people. They had already decided the truth they preferred to believe, that she was a queen of excess, dripping in diamonds while France starved. It did not matter that she had never wanted the necklace. It did not matter that she had never written those letters. It did not matter that she had never stood in the gardens of Versailles that night, whispering false promises into the cardinal's ear. What mattered was the image of it all, the story that had woven itself into the public imagination. The people whispered, then shouted, then roared. If she would do this for diamonds, what else is she hiding? The scandal clung to her, a stain that would never wash away. The revolution was coming. It was already boiling in the streets, already gathering force. The affair of the diamond necklace had not created the hatred toward her, but it had fueled it, feeding the flames that would one day burn Versailles itself. 4 years later, the palace doors were stormed by an angry mob. 8 years later, Marie Antoinette stood on a scaffold in the Place de la Révolution, her once powdered hair shorn close to her skull, her silk gowns replaced by a simple white dress. The cries of Madame Deficit filled the air, a cruel reminder of the lies that had helped bring her to this moment. She had never worn the diamonds. She had never sought the necklace. Yet here she stood, accused of spending what was left of France's wealth on her own indulgences, convicted in the court of public rage. The crowd roared as the blade fell. The queen who never touched the diamonds lost more than her jewels. She lost her crown. She lost her kingdom. She lost her head. And so ended the affair of the diamond necklace, not with the loss of a fortune, but with the loss of a queen. Good night, and beware the lies that shine like diamonds.